Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are stepping right into the heat of it. Picture this. It's a humid, sticky night in Miami.
Okay.
You're at a high-end nightclub called Vendome. The bass is rattling your chest, lights are flashing, and at one specific VIP table you have a gathering of what might be the most controversial lineup of internet figures ever assembled in one place.
It sounds like the setup to a very volatile joke, doesn't it? Or maybe a fever dream.
It really does. You've got Andrew Tate, the self-proclaimed top G. You have younger influencers like Sneeko and Myron Gaines. And then sitting right there with them is political provocateur Nick Fuentes.
All right.
And just when you think the tension can't get any higher, the DJ drops a Kanye West song specifically, one containing some very inflammatory anti-Semitic lyrics.
And of course the cameras are rolling.
Always. The internet catches wind of it, and suddenly it is a full-blown media firestorm. The narrative is set. Tate is hanging out with, as Patrick Bet-David jokingly calls them later, the Nazi Avengers.
And that specific incident, that chaotic night in Miami, is actually the launch pad for today's deep dive. But we aren't here to, gossip about who ordered bottle service.
Yeah.
We are analyzing a transcript from the PBD podcast, episode 721. Andrew Tate is the guest, and they use this nightclub incident to spiral out into this huge conversation about economics, the justice system, and the future of Western civilization.
Exactly. Our mission today is to unpack Tate's worldview as he presented it in this specific interview. We're going to look at his theory on the economy of shock, his argument for why young men are radicalizing, his critique of the U.S. justice system versus the UAE, and his incredibly controversial take on feminism.
And before we get into it, a quick but necessary disclaimer. We are here to impartially report on and analyze the arguments made in the source material. We are unpacking the logic, the rhetoric, to understand what they're saying and why.
We are not here to endorse their viewpoints, their behavior, or the company they keep.
We're just decoding the signal.
Right. So let's go back to that nightclub. The press sees this video, people seemingly celebrating this Kanye track, and the pitchforks come out. But when Patrick Bet-David asks Tate about it, Tate's defense is, well, it's interesting. He doesn't apologize in the traditional sense.
No, he pivots. It's a really skillful pivot, actually.
How so?
Well, Tate claims he didn't request the song, says he was on his phone, and if you watch the video, he does look visibly uncomfortable. He says he's a victim of guilt by association, but then he explains why the people around him, these younger influencers, did it.
He calls it the fried dopamine theory.
That's the one. Tate argues that the young influencers around him, guys like Sneeko, are incentivized purely by shock value. He says their dopamine receptors, and maybe more importantly, the audience's receptors, are completely fried.
Fried, meaning normal content just doesn't register anymore.
Precisely. In this new economy of attention, being interesting isn't enough. You have to be shocking. You have to shake people out of their apathy. He argues they played that song not because they hate a specific group, but because they knew it would get clicks.
They're mining for outrage.
Because outrage is the only currency left for young creators who are bored and just desperate for a reaction.
It's such a bleak, almost nihilistic view of content creation.
Yeah.
It's like saying, I don't care about the message, I just care about the spike in the analytics graph.
And that's where Patrick Bet-David pushes back. And I think this is a crucial dynamic in the interview. PBD is kind of the older, more traditional father figure here.
Right.
He says, look, Andrew, you can't just say, kids will be kids. You're nearly 40. You are the leader of this group, whether you asked for the title or not.
Yeah, PBD really holds his feet to the fire on that leadership angle. He's like, if you're the top G and you walk into a club with these guys, you are endorsing them by proximity.
You can't be the general and then blame the privates for misbehaving while you're standing right there.
Exactly. And Tate actually concedes this point, eventually. He admits going to the club was a mistake. He even says for Nick Fuentes, it was his first time ever in a club, which paints this hilarious image of Tate babysitting internet radicals in Miami.
But this is where the conversation really shifts gears.
Right, because for Tate, the shock value culture isn't just about bad behavior. It's a symptom of a completely broken economy. He uses this incident to explain why he thinks anti-Semitism and extremism are on the rise. And he doesn't blame the influencers. He blames the math.
This is the intellectual anchor of the entire interview. Tate argues that young men aren't waking up deciding to hate specific groups. He says they're revolutionaries looking for someone to blame because the system is mathematically screwing them.
He draws this really hard line between consumer capitalism and what he calls financialized capitalism.
Hmm.
And this seems to be the core of his whole worldview, right?
It is.
Because consumer capitalism is the classic American dream. I make a lighter, I sell it to you, we both win. It's about making things.
Exactly. The old school method, based on production and exchange. But Tate argues we've moved past that into financialized capitalism. In this new system, the only way to make real money is by already having money.
So, asset appreciation, stocks, real estate. If you own things, you get rich. If you just work for a living, you actually get poorer over time.
Let's break this down with an analogy because it's a bit dense. Think of the economy like a game of Monopoly. In consumer capitalism, the game has just started. You can roll the dice, pass go, collect your $200, and maybe buy a property. You have a chance.
Okay, that makes sense.
But Tate is arguing that we're now in financialized capitalism, which is like joining that Monopoly game after it's been running for 4 hours. All the properties are bought, all the hotels are built.
So you pass out. Go and get your $200 salary.
But landing on Park Place costs you $2,000.
That is a terrifyingly clear way to put it. Your labor is worthless compared to the rent prices set by the asset owners.
Correct. And Tate points out that the traditional markers of manhood, buying a house, finding a wife, supporting a family, all require assets. But because of inflation and asset bubbles, those things are mathematically impossible for the average young man today. You just can't save your way to a house anymore.
So if the game is rigged, flip the board.
That is his exact conclusion. He argues that because the average guy can't win by following the rules, go to school, get a job, they're just opting out. They turn to gambling, which he equates with crypto and meme coins, or they turn to radical ideologies.
They're looking to burn down a system that doesn't serve them.
And this connects right back to the anti-Semitism thing.
Oh, so.
He argues young men are looking for a scapegoat. They feel the pressure, they see the matrix closing in, and when someone online tells them it's this group's fault, they latch onto it. Not because of some deep historical understanding, but because it gives them an answer for their suffering.
He's basically arguing that if young men could afford homes and find partners, this kind of radicalization would just evaporate.
That's his theory. It's not a culture war, it's a class war in disguise.
So we've got an economy that's creating radicals.
Right.
But then Tate also feels that the political system is targeting him personally. A huge chunk of this interview is Tate railing against the United States, specifically Florida and Governor DeSantis.
Yeah, this was surprising to me. You'd think he'd love Florida. It's a right-wing haven. But he feels completely betrayed by the Republican establishment there.
He said he expected a hero's welcome when he came back to the U.S. He thought, I'm fighting the woke mind virus. They're going to love me.
Yeah.
But instead, he felt targeted.
He claims he was investigated by the Florida Attorney General despite having 0 convictions, and this leads him to a theory about decentralized power.
Which we usually think of as a good thing, right? Checks and balances.
Civics 101, yeah. But Tate inverts it. He calls the U.S. justice system a clown show precisely because power is so decentralized.
So what is logic there?
He argues that in America there are 1,000 different people, a random DA, a judge, a journalist, who all have enough power to completely destroy your life, but no single person has enough power to save you.
He calls it asymmetrical danger.
Yes. A politically ambitious attorney general can just decide to ruin your life for some clout. He feels unsafe because there's no single authority to appeal to. He can't just call the boss and say, hey, call off your dogs.
And he contrasts this directly with the UAE with Dubai. This is where he flips the script again. We see the U.S. as free and the UAE as authoritarian.
And he does too. He's very honest about it. He admits the UAE lacks freedom in our sense. You can't criticize the government. He's very clear on that. But he argues the trade-off is safety and stability.
Because power is centralized.
Right. If you're cool with the ruling class, you are safe. No random prosecutor is going to go rogue and attack you because they'd be crushed by that central power.
He brings up this theory that world leaders are basically asset managers for their local oligarchy.
A fascinating concept he touches on. The idea is that a president isn't really serving the people. They're managing the country's assets to keep the ultra-wealthy elite happy.
And in the UAE, that oligarchy is unified.
It's tight and efficient. In the U.S., he argues, the oligarchy is fractured and fighting itself, which creates chaos for everyone else. And he feels like he's a scalp in that chaos.
A trophy that ambitious politicians want to hang on their wall.
Exactly. He even mentions his new yacht, the Obsidian Blade, which is 49 meters long, by the way, as a symbol of the life he's desperately trying to protect from what he sees as a predatory U.S. system. It's like a mobile fortress for him.
Okay, let's pivot to the most radioactive part of the interview. We've covered the economy, the politics. Now we have to talk about gender.
Right.
Tate identifies what he believes is the root cause of the West's collapse, and he points the finger squarely at feminism.
And we need to be very precise about how he defines this, because he uses a very specific term, big women.
Big women, like big pharma or big tech.
Exactly. He makes a distinction. He says he's not just blaming individual women. He argues big women is a system pushed by evil men at the top. He claims these powerful men use women as conduits to destroy masculinity in the traditional family unit.
This gets into his theory about emotional versus logical arguments, doesn't it? He claims women are weaponized because they operate on emotion.
That's his argument. He uses the example of COVID mandates. He says the government's appeals were all emotional. Think of grandma, wear the mask for others. Think of the children.
Okay.
He claims that by empowering women over men, the state can control the population through these emotional levers rather than logic or facts. He sees feminism not as liberation, but as a tool for state control.
And then he just fundamentally redefines love and relationships. He argues all relationships are transactional.
He's very blunt about it. He contrasts the modern dynamic with the 1950s social contract. In his view, the old deal was man provides protection and resources, woman provides family, loyalty, and obedience.
And his argument is that modern women want the transaction to be one-sided.
Essentially, yes, that they want the protection and the money, but without holding up their end of the bargain regarding family or, deferring to male leadership.
Now, this is where he tries to flip the script entirely. He makes the claim, which a lot of people will find hard to swallow, that he's advocating for patriarchy as a form of benevolence.
That is his core paradox. He claims society was built by men for the protection of women. He even cites this tragic story about a woman being stabbed on a bus to prove his point.
What's the point he's making there?
He argues that because male authority has been dismantled, men no longer feel empowered or obligated to step in and protect women. He believes women are actually less safe now because men have checked out of that protector role.
It's a very heavy argument. He says his message is simply, men protect women, but the media reframes it as hate speech.
And that reframing has had some very real-world consequences for him. He reveals in the interview that he was officially deemed a national security threat by the British state.
A national security threat? For a podcaster? That sounds extreme.
That's what he claims. He says the rationale was that he had too much influence over military-aged males. The fear was that if he told them to riot, they might actually do it. It shows you just how influential and, to some, how dangerous his reach had become.
They didn't see him as an entertainer. They saw him as a rival commander.
That's how he frames it.
So, if we zoom out, we have a broken economy, a predatory justice system, and a collapsed social contract. What's the solution here? Because Tate and PBD go back and forth on this.
Well, the individual solution they both seem to agree on is exceptionalism.
Get rich. Escape the matrix.
Essentially. Become so successful that the rules don't apply to you. Buy the yacht, move to Dubai, build your own little world. But Tate is smart enough to realize that be exceptional isn't a societal solution.
Right. You can't build a civilization where the only way to survive is to be in the top 1%.
Exactly. What about the average guy? The guy driving the truck, the guy working the register. If he can't win, the whole system falls apart.
So what's his answer for that guy?
He concludes that unless the average man is given a real stake in society affordable housing, a partner, a reason to buy in, then revolution or collapse is inevitable. He paints this picture of the West burning because the social contract is void.
Why fight for a system that hates you?
Exactly. Why would you protect a system that hates you and starves you?
Patrick Bet-David tries to end on a more optimistic note, though, right? He's the patriot in this conversation.
He is. PBD pushes back. He argues that despite all its flaws, America is still the best option on the table compared to the UK or Russia or Iran. He believes the system is fixable if men take responsibility.
But Tate doesn't buy it.
Not really. He seems much more skeptical. He's explicitly betting against the West. He's moving his assets and his life to the UAE. He's basically shorting Western civilization.
It really is a conversation that goes from 0 to 100. You start with a Kanye song in a club, and you end up at the heat death of Western society.
It connects the dots in a way that is very specific to his worldview. He sees everything, from the song playing to the price of a house, as interconnected symptoms of a system that has turned on the very masculinity that built it.
So what does this all mean for us? For you, the listener, trying to make sense of this world?
I think the most provocative takeaway here isn't necessarily about Tate himself, but about the question he raises. That question of freedom versus safety. Well, we're all raised to believe freedom is the ultimate good. Give me liberty or give me death. But Tate openly admits he prefers the UAE, a place with no political freedom, because it offers order and safety.
And his argument is that when things get chaotic enough,
When the economy breaks and the streets aren't safe, people will always trade their freedom for safety.
that is a chilling thought. It reminds me of that old quote that people don't want freedom, they want freedom from fear.
Exactly. And looking at the economic fractures, the housing crisis, the social distrust we've talked about today, the question you're left with is, are we already making that trade? Are we slowly accepting more control, more surveillance because we're afraid of the chaos Tate is describing?
That is a massive question to chew on, from the economics of fried dopamine to the collapse of the social contract. This deep dive has been a heavy one.
It certainly has, but it helps explain why a figure like Andrew Tate resonates so deeply with so many people. He's articulating a very specific kind of despair.
We'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for listening to the deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Stay curious.